Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Politics. Today we're dealing with chapter 15, which is dealing with the offices. Last chapter we dealt with the deliberative offices. This chapter, the previous chapter before it, and the one coming after it will read the conclusion of Book 4, which deals with the question of the functions of government, and that's the function of a regime. Dealing with the terms of what we could call the deliberative, which was last chapter. This is the offices, or what we call the magistracies. Um, and then the next, in chapter 16, would be the adjudicative offices. So let's turn to this right away, because this is going to be a long chapter. Let's do this a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Next, after these things, is the distinction among offices. For this part of the regime also involves many differences. How many offices there are? Okay, we'll do some questions. One is how many offices there are, in what manner they have in what matters they have authority, and in regard to time, and in regard to time, what when they should do it, right? And how long. So therefore, this is what they should do. How many offices? What matters they should have authority over? In regard to time, how long do the offices last? So for some, make them a year. Others make them a shorter period. Others longer ones, right? So for a year, should they be for a year? Should they be uh, a shorter time, or should they be for a longer time, right? Their length, and whether the office should be perpetual, should they be forever, or they should for long duration, or neither. But the same person shall be permitted to hold them several times, or the same person not even twice, but only once. And further, in regard to the selection of officials, from which persons they should come, by which persons they should be selected, and how they should be selected. Right. This is the so who they should. Who should they come from? Who should be the people that are appointed to the offices? Who shall select them? And then um, uh, 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 how they should be selected. Now, in my little book here, I have the chart. I looked at this chapter. This chapter is this is a one of those pains in the butts, because it's a very complicated aspect. Because he gives us here in this a structure about the offices, right? And basically it comes out from, again, four modes, right? All pointing from all pointing from some are pointing from all, and some are pointing for some. The three means, this is on page 131 of this thing. The three modes of selection: election, lot, or both elections and lot. And then out of these two criteria, we get ultimately 12 possible outcomes, all selected from all by election, all selected by all by lot, and all selected by both election and lot. All selected from some by election, all selected by some by lot, all selected by some by both election and lot. Then some selected by all by election, some selected by all by election by lot, some selected from all by election and lot, and then last but not least, some selected from some by election, some selected by some by lot, some selecting by some by both election and lot. And then the conjunctures selected. Selection is by both some and all, and selection is by some both. Is from both some and all. Selection by and is from both and all, like the conjunctions in this. So that's the weird aspects of this. Is the outcome. I'm going to summarize. I'm going to read it. We're going to read it now. Whew. So this is we dealt here how they should be selected. Right. With regard to all of these, one should be able to distinguish how many modes can exist. Right. So the 12 modes ultimately. Right. and then fix the sort of offices to the sort of regimes for which they are advantage. Even to determine which should be called offices, however, is not easy. So, these things, right? The political community requires many functionaries, so that not all of those chosen by election or by lot can be regarded as officials. So therefore, this is the question: there's going to be a lot of functionaries. Are all the functionaries equal to each other? No, some are going to be part higher and some are going to be less. He goes, priests, for example, in the first place, for this must be regarded as something apart from the political officers. Because priests deal with most things, but they're kind of an office, right? And further, equippers and heralds and also envoys are chosen by election, but are not officials. So again, this questions like heralds, equippers, you know, these are not officials. Of the sorts of superintendents, some are political. The superintendents is people has governing something, overseeing something, right? Some are political and are either over all of the citizens with a view to certain actions, as for example, a general is over all of them when they are campaigning, or over a part, for example, the manager of women or the manager of children. Okay, so, soldiers, generals leading of all people, citizens fighting, campaigning, and then a part of the city is the examples of managers of women and children education. Some are related to the management of the household. These, for example, they often elect measures of grain. Now, this is a footnote 55. Probably an office created on occasional but of rationing, right? This is the officer of grain measure. And some are subordinate. Some offices are subordinate, and of such a sort that cities that are well off arrange to have slaves do them. In other words, the very wealthy cities will have slaves do them, right? Servants do them. Simply speaking, those should be most particularly spoken of as simply speaking, those should be particularly spoken of as offices to which are assigned both deliberation and judgment concerning certain matters and command, but most particularly the latter, for command is more characteristic to ruling. So therefore, he says that there's going to be a lot of functions done in the city. The only thing we should count as offices are those that deal with two things that concerning that assign both deliberation and judgment concerning certain matters and about command, because command is a characteristic of ruling. But these things make almost no difference with the view to use, as no judgment has ever been handed down to anyone disputing over the term, though there is room for such treatment of them, for such treatment of thoughts. Therefore, in function, offices, we call everything offices, but they're really the ones that really have decision-making power and decide decision-making, some level of real scope of decision-making, are the real offices. The other ones are subordinate and merely functionaries. Um, and, now, this is, and he says that, but in use, we treat them the same, but in theory and discussion, in other words, in thought, we would distinguish them. Which sort and how many offices are necessary for a city? Um, let's see. How many offices are necessary for a city to exist, and what sort are necessary but is not necessary but rather useful with a view to an excellent regime, a serious Spadeos regime, are questions one can raise in relation to every regime, but especially in the case of small cities. So therefore, how many offices? In other words, all regimes can. How many should there be? What not only what are necessary, but also what are useful, beneficial, right? Useful with review to an excellent, serious regime. Okay. Um, Spudaios regime. Again, remember Spudaios here could be also a good regime, right? The serious regime. Um, are questions one can raise in every regime, but he says especially a small city. Small city is kind of like the place where we get this is in large city. One can and should arrange to have a single office to handle a single task, division of labor, right? Divided up, single because they are many citizens, many persons can take up office. The office is being held after a long interval or only once, or and each sort of task is better done when the superintendence of it is handled by as a single matter rather than together with many matters. So therefore, in a bigger city, you can divide the labor up. In a smaller city, it's going to be harder. There's going to be less people, and you can't really divide the labor up. And it's going to be that in a bigger city, it's going to those tasks are going to have to be divided in order to accomplish them. It's going to be better handled by this division of labor, right? But in a smaller city, it's not going to have that much things to do, and therefore, you can have one official do more things. In small cities, however, many offices are necessary brought under a few persons. Because of the lack of manpower, it is not easy to have many persons in the offices. For if this were the case, who would be those who succeed them, right? And we're changing them over. Sometimes small cities need the same offices and laws as large ones, but the latter one needs them often, while the former only as long at long intervals. So therefore, in other words, they need the same offices, but the bigger cities are constantly using them, whereas the smaller cities only at longer intervals. They'll need them, but not all the time. It's be less frequent, but in intervals, right? So longer intervals, he says. Hence, there is nothing to prevent small cities from mandating that they supervise many things at once. This is what many the smaller cities, the dog catcher, the policeman, the dog sheriff, the dog catcher. In other words, in a small city, a small city, uh, you can have one official do many tasks. Okay, you don't need to have that many offices in that sense. One official, you have like one or two officials who do each official do many tasks. Um, uh, uh, Now, of course, it can be so small that one person can do everything, but sometimes that won't be one person. You might have to get another one if it's too much to do one person to do. You might have to give two people that may divide the labor up, right? And so they may to make it less odious, make it like 4 or 5. Okay, um, again, and then you want to make sure they change. You don't create life 10 years of things, right? Um, they will not interfere with one another on account of the lack of manpower. It is necessary for them to make their boards of officials like spit lamps. And this is a line 56. Apparently, a spit that could serve as a lamp holder, like dual purpose, right? Dual purpose. I hear. It's like a split lamp, there's a split and it's a lamp, dual purpose. That there was they have to make their boards dual purpose, and then we are able to say how many officers necessary belong to every city and how many officers should be need not necessary belong. So we should know, even then, we are able to say how many officers necessary belong to every city and how many officers should but need not belong. So what officers that are required, what maybe it would be good to have them, but not necessary to have them. Um, uh, 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 One who knew this could more easily bring under one office the sort of offices it is fitting to bring under a single one. So if you knew those questions, if we knew this, then we could do that. Okay, but it is also fitting. But the argument is that you can't. This is and actually 56 here. The D here, 57, sorry. The D is with the manuscript, a conjecture adopted. I think this is right here. That's a conjecture. If it is fitting, in other words, how many, if this is, how many officers should be done. This is a conjecture, right? If we were able to do this. But we don't have people. This is too complicated. It's actually, there's no, we know that it's going to depend on the city, the size of the city, and what may work in one city better than another city, okay, another place. So there's going to be greater variation here than this. He's not saying there is going to be, there's a one person who knows. The text doesn't say that. It's not like this all can be handled by someone. No, it's saying, it's kind of questioning the possibility of such a situation. It is and maybe we should fit under one, but it's a very difficult. It's not easy to know what should be done here. Next, it is also fitting not to neglect this. What sort of matters should be supervised by many boards on a local basis, and over what sort of single office everywhere should have authority. Now, this is a 58. This is, he says, reading Ponton and Pola with both throughout them, rather than with Poia and Polon with the manuscript. Which would really lead is what sort of board should supervise many matters. I don't know. I could go with both. You could argue this could be read what sort of supervised by many. What sort of matter should be supervised by many boards, or what sort of board should be supervised by many, on many boards on a local basis, over what is sort of single office should everywhere. So that's this question: what would be better done by? It is also fitting not to neglect this. This question is that this question is what should this question of what is fitting by a board of people doing different things, or one thing by that all these things should be under this authority. Okay, this is the question. In other words, what sort of matter should be supervised by many boards on a local basis, and over what sort of a single office should have authority, should everywhere have authority. Okay? In regard to orderliness, for example, should the market manager have authority over this in the market and another official in another place, or should the same one have it everywhere? Okay, the question of the location of this. Should this, if this is like, okay, have authority, therefore this authority has if it's in the market manager should have authority for it, or should it be an authority that deals with this issue that is common over all areas? Also, whether one should distinguish offices on the basis of their activity or of the human beings they supervise. I mean, for example, whether there should be a single office for orderliness, in other words, proper behavior, or one for children and another for women. Okay? Again, it's a very good question. You want to check a proper behavior, the regulating behavior. Should you do it for everyone, or should you divide it by the different types of people? In other words, what that human beings are supervising. So on the activity, in other words, we should divide on the activity or who's being supervised, right? Also, therefore, again, the distinction should be over whether there should be one person. The office should deal with the whole activity, or should you divide the office based on who's being supervised, what in that activity? In this example here, right, the orderliness, the question of the office of orderliness, whether there should have one for the children and one for the women, and one for the men, right? Also, in connection with the kinds of regimes, whether the types of offices differ for each sort, where the same office have authority in, for example, a democracy, an oligarchy, an aristocracy, and a monarchy, but are not made up of equals. And he says equal numbers of, or similar sorts of persons, but of different sorts in different regimes. In aristocracies, for example, of the educated, and oligarchies the wealthy, and of the democracies of the free. In other words, the different groups will be appointed or carried authority over that. Or whether it happens that certain of the offices exist as a result of the very differences, and that in some cases the same office is advantageous, while in others they differ. For it is fitting for the same to be large here, small there. In other words, in some regimes, there's going to be fitting for that office is going to have a large office with many people, or in another regime, it's going to be fitting that's going to be a small office with not many people. Okay, based on the regime, the questions of who's going to be selected and who's going to be at, like he says here, those the similar, in other words, uh, 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 an office of authority who's going to be selected of equals, or similar, made not of equals, but of people similar, right? So therefore, like this, and different sorts, based on the different type, different regimes will have different sorts picked, and whether that happens that the certain office will exist, then this office will exist as a result of those differences of regimes, where in some cases there'll be a large size and sometimes they'll be small. Some offices are indeed particular to particular regimes, such that as of preliminary consulars. This is not democratic, whereas a council is popular. So preliminary consul is the council that before the council, where the council is popular. Okay, for there should be something of the latter sort, which takes care of the preliminary deliberations for the people, so that they can pursue their occupations. This is oligarchic only when they are few in number. So if they're, in other words, you need to, okay, whatever you need to make it so that people can don't have to spend all the time deliberating. So you make it so that the people all can deliberate, but they don't have to spend all their time deliberating. So you have a body that, creates what they will have to deliberate on, decide, make policy, make decisions, make the proposals, and then they submit them to the assembly. Now, again, he's saying that as long as this is all right, if this group is not small, this group is big, then it's more popular. If it's oligarchy, when there's few of these people in here, remember the preliminary council is usually very small, and the council is bigger, right, than the preliminary, right? Therefore, this is a small group that advises this group that then the people then advise, right, and elect or produce it here. But the number of preliminary consulars is necessary for you, and this is and so this is necessary oligarchy. But where both of these officials exist, the preliminary consuls have been established as a counter to the councilors. Okay. For the consular is popular, the preliminary consul oligarchic. Yet, even the power of the council is overturned in these sorts of democracies, in which the people themselves meet and transact all business. So, even the council may be democratic, but when the people meet and do this, even those can be overelected by the people because the real decision is held by the assembly, right? This is usually the result when those coming to the assembly are either well off or get pay. Okay, 59 here. This is reading Uporia tis elimitatos with the manuscript rather than Oporia et emelatuv are well off through pay, right? That's with Sprengel and this. He's not saying it's both well off and with pay, separate things. Where uh, 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 if you go with Dinzinger and Spiegel's editions of the text, the Greek text, you will say that they're well off because of pay. Again, that this is both possibilities can be here to think about it. Um, why? This has results of coming to the assembly either well off or get paid. For as they have leisure, they can collect together frequently and decide all things themselves. Right? If the people are very well off, or they get paid to come. They have leisure. And if they have leisure, they can come and have time to deliberate. They don't have to deal with the work, right? Now, let's go over here. The managers of children and managers of women and many other offices that has authority for this sort of superintendence is aristocratic and not democratic. In other words, these kind of things, they have a tendency towards these kind of things are aristocratic in character. So therefore, different offices are going to have different types of offices are going to push. In other words, the office can push. An office can have a character. It can have a oligarchic, a democratic, or a aristocratic character, right? In that sense. And therefore, this is the interesting aspect of here, right? This regulates and moves the regime towards those, or in other words, an aristocratic office will kind of be in a democratic or an oligarchic regime will kind of counter the oligarchic or democratic tendency. Likewise, a democratic institution in a aristocratic regime will prevent the extreme, or an oligarchic regime will prevent it from going to becoming too few, too much. For how is it not possible to prevent the wives of the poor from going out? It is, nor is it oligarchic for the wives of oligarchs to live luxuriously. In other words, again, moderating the rich, right? Concerning these matters, in other words, it is aristocratic in character, not oligarchic, because he says that if you're going to regulate not in the poor, right, but it's also not oligarchic because how are you going to luxuries can limit luxury to. The purpose of these superintendents is about it's preventing excessive, living beyond your means, prevent wastefulness or extravagance in that sense, right? Next, concerning these matters, let this much be said for now, and let us now make an attempt to treat the selection of officials from the beginning. The varieties of selection depending on three principles. This is okay. This is what I said in my introduction here. I read the thing. This is where this gets here. Which these principles, which when combined, necessarily embrace all the modes. Of the three, the first is who selects the official. The second, from whom they are selected, and finally, in what manner. Right. In each case, these three, there are three varieties. So each three. For either from either all of the citizens select some, or some. Sorry, either all of the citizens select or some of the citizens select. They either select from all or from certain persons distinguished by assessment, for example, or family or virtue, right? So therefore, assessments be by because of example, assessment, family or virtue. The correction, in other words, people have legitimate parents and things like this. Family virtue is excellence, like this character, good character, or some other thing. As in Maga, it was from those who returned from exile together and fought the alliance against the people. Right, 61. This is the possible reference to overthrow of the democracy at Megria and Thucydides, but he's not certain about this. This Lord is. And the selection is made either by election or by lot. And these may again be conjoined, by which I say that some may be selected by some and others by all. Some may be selected by all and others from some. And some may be selected by election and others by lot. And in these cases, of each of these varieties, there will be four modes. For either all select from all by election, or all from the basis of lot, and from lot either by from all either by turns or for example, on basis of tribes or quarters or clans, until all the citizens have been gone through, or from each, or from all each time. So there's even more selection in that sense. Or all select from some by election, or from all by some by lot, right? This is, so let's look at 62 for a second. 62 here is, he's bracketing the E with Newman. Although this much disputed passage, I refer to the order of the manuscript rather than reconstruction by Grenzer. He then, at note 63, he does Grenzer. 64, okay. He again, he stays with the second manuscript. He goes some by lot, and offices can be selected partly in one way and partly by another. So again, this is that I kind of read through the ultimate outcomes. Again, if some are selecting, they may do so either from all by election, or by all by lot, or some by election and some by lot, or offices may be selected partly in one way and partly in another. I mean, for example, they can be selected from all partly by election or partly by lot. So 12 modes arise. So this is what leads us to 12 modes, apart from two different conjunctions. Okay, this is the selection here. There's two different conjunctions. With case the conjunction types that we talked about there, those subvarieties. And 65 is that, but the 12, and this is, I disagree with, I agree with him here. 12 modes are follows: all selecting from all by election or lot or both, all selecting from some by election or lot or both, some selecting from all by election or lot or both, some selecting from some by election or lot or both. Some others conjoin, the other two conjoinings are when selection is done by some and all, and when it is done from both some and all. Okay, so those are the 12 modes and two conjunctions. Whew, right? Um, of these systems of selection, two are popular. The two are from all to select from all by election or by lot. 66 here is interesting because he says, bracketing the Aegeus with direct. It is possible that a line has been dropped out of the text this way. So he accepts terms. This is where he kind of does it. By lot, or by both, some of the offices being selected by lot and others by election. So they're for two popular. So these are the two popular. One is that they're selected all from this. In other words, from all to select from all by election or by lot, or both, some by of the officials being selected by lot and others by election. That's so when all select, but not at the same time, and select either from all or from some, either by lot or by election, or select from all and both from some, either by a lot or election. Now this is 67. Again, this is his acceptance, the supplement. He acts Newman supplement right here. This line here. He adds this from Newman. He gives Newman. Or both. By both, I mean some offices by lot and others by election. It is a characteristic of a regime. And this is polity again. Polity is politeia, and it's the regime, same word, sort of characteristic of a regime. So therefore, as regime-like, it is like the regime called regime, right? When some select from all, by election or by lot, or by both, some offices by election and others by lot. This is characteristics of an oligarchic regime. That is polities and oligarchic. of an oligarchic regime. Though though by both is more oligarchic, when some offices are selected by all, from all, and others are from some, this is characteristic of a regime. Run in run. I think he's right here. The addition in a regime run in an aristocratic fashion, and that's why I wouldn't say polity. It's a regime run, and he's talking about aristocratic character of the thing. Or offices. Now he adds a thing here. This is the addition of text. Or offices are selected by election, or some by election, and others by lot. Again, this is another aspect of its aristocratic character. Um, and 68. The meaning of the text, all of which is bracketed by Dens, are uncertain and much disputed. This is a big thing in the Greek text dispute. This section here is like the different manuscripts will say different things. So he goes on the basis of argument seems clear, but the basis of the argument seems clear. What is being discussed are non-democratic variants of regime. He's arguing. Okay. The maximum supplement would appear to be en pentataiheros, which is bracketed. All the offices are selected by lot in B1, and by B1 he means over. I think it's over. Okay, B1 is this line of text. Okay, line one. Yeah, B1 right here. This is B1 right here. Okay. So therefore, this is that thing. It is oligarchic when some are selected by election. 69 again. This is accepting the from that text again. Lord constantly he's picking what part of the different manuscripts he kind of reads with. This is one of the pains in the ass in dealing with the politics is the different editions of the Greek text. It's like, and there's been some edits by some people like Dernziner, Newman, and the like. So let's continue. So I repeat again. It is oligarchy when some are selected by elections. And similarly, when some select from some select some by law, though this does not occur. In other words, that some will select some through law. It's possible, but it doesn't occur. And when some select from some from both law and election. And this is also oligarchy. It's aristocratic when some select from all, and on occasion, all from some by election. So therefore, these two, in other words, when some select from all, and from the occasion, all from some by election. This is aristocratic. So those are different types of the modes and their connection to the specific type of regime or the direction towards the regime that might push. The modes concerning offices are then at so many in number and are distinguished in this matter according with regimes. And towards regime inclines either that it would represent or would incline towards or direct towards. Which are advantages for which regimes and how their selection should occur will become evident together with the powers of the offices and which of these are now. Okay, 70 here. This is that line, and that's it deals with 6.8. This is why some people argue that we have to go to 6.8. This is why at the end of the last chapter of 8 really forces us to kind of look at this again. So in other words, it's not this is where this is more further addressed. It's not going to be addressed here in that sense. So again, let's go back for a second for here. Which are advantage for what regimes and how their selection should occur will become evident, right? Together with the powers of the offices in which these are. Okay, and again, this is he will really flush us out in chapter 8 of book 6. By power of the office, I mean, for example, having authority over revenue or having authority over defense. In other words, for a different kind of power is involved in generalship than having authority of making agreements in the market. So therefore, the type of agreement, type of authority, the powers of the office, and which are these tied to this. Okay. Again, he will continue this. He stops here with the discussion of offices. He interrupts it. And he will continue this at the end of. So there's a weirdness of this. This is like maybe someone should have reordered these books that take all of 6, right, and maybe moved it here. But maybe you need to, before you can make the regimes, you need to know about change and preservation. Okay, so this is where we end here. We'll just end chapter 15 here. If you have any questions or comments, please put them below, and I'll answer them. If you have any specific questions about the politics dissection, or even any question about this, if you have specific text questions, please raise them in that sense. This again, the politics is a difficult text, and translations sometimes are less really are sometimes more interpretations than a faithful rendition of what you would read in the Greek text. Um, if you've liked it, like it, share it with a friend, share it in your social media. Didn't like it, dump on it, and tell me why. Put a comment explaining what the criticisms of this. And, okay, so I can learn something. Maybe I made a mistake. I make mistakes. I'm a human. And I'm doing this like sometimes live and trying sometimes I misread something. This is not performed. Um, if you have want to follow me on social media, the links are below. If you want to help, I mean, this is the begging part, right? I'm self-conscious about this. If this is it is costing me this. This is now costing me because the size of this channel is growing. It's bigger than that. I have to pay money to YouTube because YouTube. I'm not big enough that I make revenue from them. In that sense, they and I'm large. It's now I have to the size of my files are pretty big. For a long time, I never had to do that because my channel was kind of like once every year or so I do something. But ever since I started this process of getting something out daily to you guys that deals with this, and I'm going to be dealing again after I finish the politics, which would be a month or so more, maybe 2 months more. We will then turn to the Montesquieu, and I'm probably going to do a run through of the Prince again on top of it, maybe. So, okay, this is going to be lots of channels out there, and I don't want to have to reduce them. So you can help me through Subscribe Star, Patreon. You're going to say, but yeah, you don't have any rewards for us. Okay, if you build it, I will do something. If you guys are there, if there's things there, and you want to help a lot, you can simply just, if you don't want to be a member, you can just find my Google email and use Google Wallet. Okay, never. I'm not gonna. This is how that. It's not for this. Another way you can help is to buy this. If you buy this, my notebook, my recent book, a notebook for Aristotle's politics, published by me through Lulu, self-published. I did this because the publishers wanted the two academic, three. I think there was 3 to 4 academic textbook publishers wanted to charge $100 for it, and I thought over $100. And I did it myself. It's not, it's, okay, there's gonna, I self-published, and I did have it someone go through and make sure we corrected it, and I made corrections. I did two. This has been like two corrections, published corrections of things. Um, this is a notebook. This is kind of like a study book. This is not. It's like a Cliff's Notes, but it's not mere summary. It's book by book, chapter by chapter guide going through the politics. You buy it through Lulu, I will make more than if you bought it through Amazon. In other words, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or any of the online publishers you can find it at. If you buy it there, they make the money. They'll make more money. If you buy it by Lulu, yes, but Lulu charges transportation. I understand, and those places may not. But I will make, if you buy it from Lulu directly, I make the profit that those other bookstores would make. So please, if you want to help, I understand why you buy. You can buy from Amazon. Buy whatever easiest for you. I'll take less money that way, but I don't care. This is as long as you do it. A friend, a student, a person who's who might want to read the politics and going to go through it or study it. This is a very, very useful guide. It even has a bibliography at the end. It's not mine. I got permission from the person to use it for this, to kind of guide through the text. I added a lot of stuff in it, but it's about how the frame, how he did it. It was very useful. That not only the general texts, but also and also the themes of the different parts of the politics, with all the secondary literature, only the literature available in English. I removed all the French, most of the French and the German and the other language stuff, because I figured that most people are going to be using it in English, and it's not going to be if you want you can find online his a similar bibliography by him every year. He produces a new one, new version editions. Um, that is, again, this is would be useful. But that's that. Enough of this, me selling that. That's it for today. Have a good day. I will see you tomorrow or the next session, when we look at we wrap up chapter 16 of book 4, the last chapter, and then we'll turn to book 5, which is on change, on stasis, factional conflict, and regime change of regime, or revolution, is the say. So therefore, that's it. Take care and goodbye.